Oh, we are live. Hi, everyone. My name is James Marin, Integrative Registered Dietitian, Environmental Nutritionist.
My name is Dahlia Marin, Registered Dietitian Nutritionist, and we welcome you. We're going to start calling you guys our Good Gut Gang. Let us know how you feel about that. And this is a gang you want to be part of. Hopefully, it's a positive one.
Yes. Today's topic we are discussing, we are live every other Friday. Today's topic we are discussing is emotional trauma and gut health, and even like emotional trauma, SIBO, IBS, just how it connects to the gut. And spoiler alert for those of you that don't have time, there is a connection. We are here to remind you that yes, there is a connection. The science is there, and if anything, over the years, it'll just get stronger and stronger and stronger as more research comes out. So if you need to leave, it's Friday. You got to get the kids. You got to make dinner. You got to do stuff. We get it. You can always circle back and watch the episodes on Instagram or YouTube. We are not mental health professionals. We are not psychologists. We are not here to go through all your trauma, but we're here as a reminder, right? We are here to voice, we have trauma. A lot of our patients have trauma. We're seeing this more often. We're seeing this connection in real life. So we just wanted to kind of just put it out there, hear your guys' thoughts. Hi to our Good Gut group. Hi, everyone watching this. If you have questions, we are live. If you want to say something that from your own experience about trauma and your gut health, feel free to post it, right? This is our community. This is our time to come together and just share in this discussion, share in our community, and we'd love to hear from you.
And I'm excited. I'm excited really that this conversation around trauma is becoming more and more destigmatized because within our realm of gut health, we have seen it firsthand and the research has shown it that the two really do tie into one another. So as people are more open, more honest with themselves, first and foremost, to admit, I have experienced trauma, or to admit to receiving help or seeking help, or to admit to their care team, not that they have to go into details of it, but yes, I have encountered trauma in my life. Right. It's not going to cause judgment from your care team, and I really hope it doesn't, but most healthcare professionals are trauma informed, or if not just trauma familiar, and really vigilant to kind of support your needs and assess and understand how trauma might be impacting the way that you're currently feeling and the symptoms that you're currently having. We see this a lot, especially as registered dietitians. You guys have noticed, if you've been following us, if you follow along with our lives, you will notice that we talk a lot about stress in the gut, trauma in the gut. I think a lot of the times we might have patients who say, I'm extremely restricted in what I eat. I've cut out more and more and more foods, but I'm not getting better. I'm only getting worse. Or they'll say, my symptoms are cyclical. And we'll kind of review what are the roots of their symptoms. What is a commonality in their symptoms? It tends to be a cascade of they feel well, they feel like they're eating well, they're feeling well, their stress is low, and a stressor comes along. We've all had stress in these last couple of years to a very high degree. And that could be on top of other things we're dealing with. But the stressor comes along and might tip them over the edge, or might send them back into kind of a tailspin or a spiral of gut symptoms. We know there is more and more evidence showing the bidirectional relationship between your gut and your brain and your brain and your gut, and back and forth. So it's so important for us who support you all with nutrition for your gut to really address this, or we feel like we'd be doing you a disservice to say, yep, it's all nutrition, and if you're eating perfectly, you're going to feel perfectly, and that's it. That's all there is to it. And we know life is not that black and white. There's a lot more nuance to it. And those of us who are helping the others with nutrition or with gut health really should be informing ourselves and really understanding how trauma kind of factors into this. I can't tell you guys how many of you I'm so honored to work with, but how many of my patients will tell me, yeah, I kind of lost it. I kind of went down a spiral, and I kind of spiraled out of control. The holidays came around and they might not even realize that the holidays are triggering for them. Maybe they have suppressed trauma that has occurred
I
around the holidays. And maybe just being around those really highly palatable and highly processed foods while having either this trauma that they're aware of or kind of unconscious trauma might trigger them. And I had this over the holidays with a lot of my patients. They came back in the new year and they were like, "Oh, I really need you because I'm hurting.
Mhm.
I just binged and I thought I could, handle it. And I really thought that I could have boundaries, but someone gifted me a box of cookies. And sure
Ooh.
enough, I ate the whole thing in 2 days."
And when it's a gift, you have to like eat it, right? No, you don't. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, let us know, guys. Let us know in the comments if this might be something that you've seen, you've
Yeah.
experienced, you've heard of, or if you really have kind of understood the relationship between trauma and gut health. And not only that, I think, you know, um, many people don't realize that nutrition requires, yes, information and knowledge, and nourishing your body to the best of your ability requires boundaries. You
Mhm.
really want to have healthy boundaries with healthy foods and the amounts that you're eating of unprocessed whole foods, right? And I don't really like to call foods healthy or unhealthy, but whole nourishing foods.
Mhm.
So having boundaries with those is important. Having boundaries with hyper processed and ultra processed, hyper palatable foods, that's also really important. And I think when we don't have sometimes boundaries in other areas of our lives, that might spill over into our nutritional choices. When we
Mhm.
feel overwhelmed, exhausted, run down with other people or our jobs or other situations in our lives, that overwhelm and exhaustion and just feeling like you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, that can really spill into other areas of your life. And
Mhm.
it's pretty convenient that you're eating 3+ times a day. So
Yes, and some examples of those foods like Dahlia mentioned, what is I mean, around the holidays, like she mentioned, the box of cookies, it could be cake, could be things you have in your home, right? You notice you're just making more pastas more often, you're eating more breads, and look, a lot of these foods aren't necessarily bad, like Dahlia mentioned, but it's adding to this perfect storm, right? You're diverting this energy elsewhere, and here's another acronym for you guys, the MGB, microbiota gut brain axis, like Dahlia mentioned, that connection to the microbes in your gut and your brain, your mental health, your how you're handling these moods and these feelings, right? It's literally a combination. Emotions are just a combination of chemical reactions, mixing, like we believe, mixing with your soul, mixing with hormones,
neurotransmitters.
neurotransmitters, and a majority of it is mediated by all these microbes in and on your body, right? So it is quite the symphony. It is quite the miracle happening every single day. And a lot of us, one, don't even know it. A lot of us kind of know it. And then the rest of us kind of like take it for granted. Even we know it. We're kind of in this and reading this and looking at this and trying to stay up to date as best we can on this. And even some days we don't even think about it. We don't think about this amazing symphony going on. And how do we really then kind of center ourselves and regain that consciousness? And we did some meditation today, which was great. I needed it because I was feeling really anxious this morning. I've been going through my own set of traumas with a lot of things, past trauma, current, you name it. So, it was like, oh, I feel so anxious. I got to go. My first thought was, I'm going to go work out, right? I'm going to go hit the gym. I was thinking, I was imagining myself like just pumping weights and like, oh, like a man, right? And like, I'm going to go punch the bag. And I kind of came back home because I was like, okay, Dahlia, I'm going to go to the gym. And Dahlia was sitting in the living room, like watching a meditation video. And I was like, that looks really nice. Like, when was the last time I really just gave myself a good amount of time to sit with my thoughts, meditate, breathe? I mean, we do yoga and things like that, but this wasn't yoga. I wasn't, doing other stretches and downward dog and all this stuff. I was just sitting with myself. That helped me a lot today. So we like, guys, we like to keep it real. We like to share from our own experience as well, and that was a huge help. For those of you that do know this, we've lost family members in the last several months. Those of you may know, I witnessed someone die in front of me on top of, and not just, yeah, anyway, I mean, it's been crazy the last, like 6 months.
Yeah.
So a lot to decompress, as well as even past things that then bubble up that remind you, that get triggered in your brain. We have quite a deep memory, so a lot
Mhm.
can happen. Yes.
And even though, again, maybe you might have suppressed memories if you've gone through trauma, sometimes you might not even realize the memory is there. Your brain
Yeah.
can almost shield you from that, disassociate you from that memory. A lot of the times, the way that our nervous system responds, even if it's not to the same threat or perceived threat in our lives, that can really trigger and elicit a response from our nervous system. And again, our sympathetic nervous system, I was just talking about this a lot yesterday with my patients. Our sympathetic nervous system will try to protect us. Our sympathetic nervous system is really a system in place meant to help us survive. And we can survive in different ways, right? Sometimes it's fight. You might be fighting, and it might not be necessarily fighting for your life, but when there's a threat, your sympathetic nervous system kind of kicks into gear. If you've always fought, if maybe you were exposed to or encountered abuse, or you had to really fight for yourself, fight for your fight for freedom or fight for safety, then you might go into fight. Your sympathetic nervous system might go into flight. So you might kind of take off or avoid conflict. You might go into freeze, where you almost just dissociate from things. You just kind of stop. You are in a state, it almost appears like depression, and maybe it could be. But your sympathetic nervous system has told you, just freeze, play dead. That might save your life. Or you might fawn. You might, instead of focusing attention on yourself, you might really focus it on someone else. And so that could arise from early adverse life events. So these EALs, we have written a lot about. We're going to publish posts, we're going to publish a blog on this, but these early adverse life events have been highly studied. We know that we're really developing our nervous system, and we're really developing the way that our body learns to cope, survive, and adapt in our early stages of life. So in our first several years, or maybe in our first decade of life or so, our body is really training itself. Our nervous system is really training itself on what to do if there's a threat. Does it fight? Does it fly? Does it freeze? Does it fawn? And we know that those who have encountered early adverse life events have been shown in various studies to have increased instance of IBS. There have been so many different studies, anywhere from 15 to 305% increase in symptoms of IBS are observed in those with these EALs, early adverse life events. So they are really significant. And again, they really train the nervous system through the HPA axis, right? And then now we're even starting to understand how there is that involvement with the hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal axis. And so we're starting to see, okay, again, gut brain, how are these two communicating? How are these neurotransmitters that we are sending out and we are developing when we are in this state of stress affecting our gut? And we know, again, there's that bidirectional communication. So with that, again, if you're fighting, your body is not going to say, okay, I need to reproduce now and I need to really digest food very well now. So with that, you might speed up digestion. So you might experience diarrhea, or you might experience increased transit time. You might find undigested food in your stool. Or again, you might find that you are having these really loose stools, or that your transit time is really shortened. So that could be something that's happened. You might go into flight or freeze. So digestion can certainly slow down. Studies have shown that when you are stressed, you're producing, and we've said this, less digestive juices. So less stomach acid, less bile. And bile is that digestive juice that's produced in your liver, held in your gallbladder. But bile really does help you break down fat. And in doing so, another one of its roles is to activate a hormone called motilin. So it helps with motility. So if maybe you're in flight or freeze, you've slowed motility and slowed digestion. And maybe you're feeling a lot more bloated. Maybe you are feeling a lot more constipated and you're having slowed transit time, or you're having increase or decrease in transit time rather. So things are really moving down a lot more slowly. So we've seen this, and then the research supports it. So really, really interesting.
And then with that, maybe that wasn't something you were aware of, and maybe you had a cholecystectomy, right? Maybe
Your
there was.
gallbladder removed.
So that is, yeah, gallbladder removal. Cholecystectomy is gallbladder removal, and then you've had that, and wow, that was inflamed. There was an issue there. You had maybe some maldigestion of fat. You were getting a lot of those symptoms, and you had your gallbladder removed. And now what? Did you address the root cause? Did you assess the puzzle piece as being part of that emotional trauma and that emotional link? Maybe not. So now you're missing your gallbladder, which is okay. It's not the end of the world. It's not like, okay, you're done, just pack it up, right? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is still address those other roots. Still, if this sounds familiar, if you're gleaning something from this, great. We are here again, a reminder to look down this route. If you've gone through all the nutrition, if you've done so many resets or detoxes or all the supplements and all this, and you're still feeling like, man, you know what? I'm still not feeling good. Assess the emotional aspect, assess the spiritual aspect as well, right? Very much connected. So yeah, that's the reminder. So
Definitely.
there could be a
So
lot
if you're
of factors.
finding,
Yeah.
okay, I go through periods of feeling better, and then when stress starts creeping up, I relapse, and I relapse hard.
Mm-hmm.
Work with a trained mental health professional. Definitely no shame in that. And it's a referral that we make very regularly. We're interested in this stuff and we research it on our own, but we are not trained mental health professionals.
Yes,
so
disclaimer.
we just scratch the surface with our
Yeah.
patients and bring it up in a very non-threatening way. We try to bring it up in a very compassionate way, and it's non-accusatory, but it's just like, hey, have you explored this? Just this week, I've had a lot of my patients have some revelations. Yesterday, I was talking to one of my patients, and finally she got to the bottom of her constipation. Her gut health was doing a lot better, but she wanted to talk a little bit about intuitive eating and having a healthier relationship with food, and really trying to understand why she kept falling into these cycles of binging on foods that she knew logically were not foods that were going to help her meet her goals that she set, right? Her goals were to lower blood sugar, lower her body mass index, and continue to further support her gut health. So I can logically tell somebody, well, just eat fiber, eat less refined carbohydrates, right? Less sugar, less refined grains, eat less saturated fats, right? And okay. But there was something that kept holding her back. And she kept finding that her fiber intake was low and her refined and processed foods were high. And we got to talking, and we were talking about this whole nervous system adaptation and really talking about trusting yourself when it comes to your meals and how your nervous system responds even around food. I really like to ask that question when I'm talking to my patients. What's your relationship with food right now? And then we kind of delve into it. So my patient yesterday shared that she had a complicated relationship with food because she was never allowed to trust herself with food. She said her mother was always very controlling and controlled what, where, when, why everyone was allowed to eat in the house. We talked through it, and we came to find her mom had a lot of her own issues with food. So mom struggled with a lot of the same healthy issues she was trying to tackle herself. But mom was being very, very, very controlling with everyone. She said they weren't allowed to eat anything, even if it was healthy, without asking her mom first. And this taught her distrust. Intuitive eating is something that should come very natural to us. It's kind of just an innate response that our body has, unless we have some type of genetic or hormonal abnormality where maybe our body's not making the right hunger and satiety hormones. But for most of us, that's very innate. That's very natural to us, where we're able to regulate appetite and satiety. This is natural as babies and toddlers. And if we let our littles honor this, then they'll grow up learning how to intuitively eat. And if no one has been micromanaging this process for them, they've learned those skills throughout. So they've developed these foundational skills as children. So she wasn't trusted to develop this skill herself. And now she was not only having this kind of difficult relationship with distrust with herself with food, she is now finding herself just not even knowing what to do when it comes to meal times. Food itself is a trigger. She had to hide food a lot of the times when she was younger. She said she would binge on things at friend's house, or she would go to the corner store and buy things for herself. And so she and I talked about the fact that, you know, she was really raised in a mindset of restriction and really raised in a mindset of lack, right? So there was really not this abundance. And when we are able to kind of trust our intuition, having that mindset of abundance is helpful. So I reminded her of that. You know, you really came from this scarcity mindset of, you really need to be scarce with what you're eating. You have to heavily control it. You can't trust your body. You have to just trust me. And so she's, again, still struggling with that. So she and I worked on that, talked about working on that. We talked about recognizing that she's an adult now. She could have as much abundance as she wants of either whole foods or hyper processed foods. And if she can have, we use cupcakes as an example because she brought this up. If she can eat cupcakes abundantly, realize why she isn't right now. And that might not align with her values in life anymore. So this topic can be so interwoven, and it might be overt trauma that people are experiencing, like sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse. This could be early in life. This can be as adults. Or it could be a poor relationship with food that is a trauma in and of itself. But if you're continually relapsing with your gut health and you're not figuring it out why, and your diet is perfect and you eat all the right foods, this is something to explore.
Yes, very great. That was a great story and sharing. I mean, yeah, that's so wonderful. And going back to that kind of relationship with food, especially at a young age, the whole food aspect is so important. You know, especially under the age of 2, not adding too much sugar and salt, or not adding any sugar really, excessive amounts of salt or flavoring or artificial flavoring and things like that. I mean, so important, but that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. I wanted to give you just 3 tips as well. Just you know, sometimes, you know, we think about like, okay, I got to get my gut health on track. I'm going to go see a therapist. I'm going to see this other psychologist. I'm going to go see this Ayurvedic healer who's going to do sound therapy and all that. And you have this wonderful ideal picture. And then you look at it at night and you're going, oh my gosh, where do I start? And it's overwhelming, right? So tip number 1 is just even setting aside time to do some research and seek some help is a great first step, right? That is a great first step, right? It doesn't have to be this big, huge thing. It could be a tiny thing. Number 2, being open with someone you care about. Okay. So find someone, a friend, a cousin, a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, significant other, church, whatever it is, where you can open up and really connect and speak to someone and kind of share these thoughts. And then maybe do step number 1, or, you know, these are not in order. Okay. Number 3, think about your why. Why are you doing this? Like for Dahlia and I, we're very health focused, right? We're like, man, we were so unhealthy as a kid. And it was probably a collection of the food we're eating as well as our traumas. It was all of the above, right? So it was like, we want to feel healthy. And in our journey, it really was nutrition focused. And then we started to go, oh, wow, our mental health, and oh, wow, spiritual health and physical health, and all these other aspects of health really started to diversify, right?
And when your physical health is in line, then you have more energy, you have more time, you have more resources for all these other areas of things you value.
Right. It's like a video game, right? Like you're playing a video game and you unlock a level. You're like, oh wow, I did really good at this level. Now I'm going to level 2, and then level 3, and level 4. It's really never ending. That is also maybe the bad news, but it's also the good news, I think, because you're just going to feel better and better and better in our opinion, and get stronger and stronger and stronger. So those are the 3 tips. We would love to look at some questions now, and then
some questions. And we've had some really good comments too.
Maybe
so
we answered some.
We want to hear if you have questions below. We want to be able to answer those, and we want to address that and see, are you guys interested in this topic? Do you want to hear more about it? Do you want to read a blog about it, or have us talk about this more? One of our amazing dietitians, Vicky, who's here, Delta Nutrition.
Oh, cool.
She said sometimes it's also social pressure. people at a party commenting and saying things like, eat some real food, and shoving a slice of pizza in my face. And again, I think one, that speaks to us and our boundaries and feeling comfortable. Just like if you struggle with alcohol addiction, you're not going to say, okay, I'll have a little drink because it makes you feel better. You're going to say, no.
Have a real drink.
Yeah. I don't drink that sparkling water.
So
So you're going to have boundaries, right? Because you've understood. So food addiction can be very real. And so if you're feeling like that's something real for you, you don't need to explain to people why you're doing it. But if you just either have a food addiction, you have IBS, if you just don't want to eat those foods because they don't align with your values and they don't make you feel your best,
that's me.
Don't fall into that social pressure. That could be, again, reliving trauma. Maybe you were forced as a child to eat things you didn't want to, and you never developed healthy boundaries with food. So explore that. If you're consistently finding, oh, when I am around others, I just can't help but fall into social pressure. And the people I'm surrounding myself with, their values don't align with mine. So every time we go out to eat, they're shoving pizza in my face. That's a hard question to ask yourself. Am I aligning and surrounding myself with others whose values align with mine? So we're going deep, right? It's not just nutrition, it's relationships and it's community, because community is important to your foods.
Yeah.
Okay. Would love to know more about how trauma influences our gut health. Super interesting. All right. Perfect.
So we'll definitely.
Okay. So someone's asking, why do some people have intense hunger during times of stress and some cannot eat it at all? Is it also related to fight or flight? This is a really good and really complex question. So yeah, I think some don't have appetite, possibly because of that sympathetic nervous state that they're in. So it might be fight or flight. Again, if you are running from some type of hypothetical threat, if there's a lion chasing you or a bear, you're not going to stop to eat an apple off a tree, right? You're not going to stop to, procreate and have a kid, right? So your hormones are going to downregulate, and your appetite and your digestive capacity is going to downregulate. So some people don't have appetite. Some people, again, it's asking the question, is it actual hunger or is it a coping mechanism? Is it coming from a position of saying, my body is physically hungry, my body has produced more ghrelin, and that's that hormone that makes you feel hungry? Or when I was a child and I felt stressed or overwhelmed or uncomfortable, my parents taught me to cope with food, or I coped with that myself because I didn't have an adult available to me who was able to help me kind of decipher and understand my emotions. So food was my comfort and food was my support person. So you want to ask yourself, which one of those things is it coming from? If IBS is in play, you want to ask yourself, is that hunger coming from malabsorption or decreased capacity, decreased affinity, decreased capability to absorb nutrients properly? Maybe your body's not hungry for calories, but maybe it's hungry for nutrients. If somebody, for example, is dealing with relapsing or, cases of small intestinal bacterial or methanogenic or fungal overgrowth over and over, we know that in those instances, they're likely to be deficient in iron, in B12 or other B vitamins, and vitamin D. So is it actual physical hunger, where again, they've produced more of that hunger hormone ghrelin, or is it hunger for nutrients, or is it hunger for coping skills and coping mechanisms? And food just has been the default for a really long time. So those are questions that come to mind with that question.
Very good summary of that.
Thanks. All right. Okay, so another request for a blog. Love that.
Yeah, guys, so make sure you're subscribed, follow, head over to our website, which is pinned at the bottom, where you can sign up for our newsletter so you will know. We have a lot of cool things in the works, a lot of content coming your way. And
let us know if you want us to talk more about mindful eating techniques, or, our dietitians are all three of them are so amazing. I learn from them all the time with mindful eating techniques. But Joseph has worked with eating disorder patients. Karina is trained in mindful eating and learning more about eating disorder. Vicky is really interested in mindful eating. It's something I'm a novice in, but I'm always looking to learn from them. I'm not a novice in it, but, I haven't taken that special dive like they have in it. So I like talking about it with my patients, but yeah.
What do you? I'm going to answer. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't want to cut you off. You're on a roll today. Would you say a lot of people struggle with their relationship with food and don't know how or who to talk to?
Hmm.
I think so. I'm one, right? You guys look to us, look, and we're like talking here, right? You guys are listening, and which is great. We're a community. This comes from struggle, right? If you're wondering, like, man, Dahlia knows so much, and like maybe James knows so much, and all this stuff, it comes from struggle, and we're always
Sometimes it comes from a book, and sometimes it comes from the book of life for us.
exactly. And so we always try to humble ourselves and like, really, we don't know as much as we should. We're always trying to learn, but then some of it does come from experience, right? I going through that trauma and not knowing what to eat and not growing up with a healthy routine, just in general, let alone with food. So, I was a kid eating Hot Pockets and cereal every day and ice cream, and that was my food, right? So understanding this relationship with food was not even there for me. And that is unfortunately true. I don't want to say for a lot of people, but if we're looking at the numbers, you're right, the standard American diet, the numbers of chronic disease, the number of food confusion, food deserts, food insecurity, yeah, we're approaching a majority of Americans are struggling with understanding food and having that connection with food in some way, shape, where maybe 30 years ago that wasn't the case. But as we start to see, unfortunately, these numbers increase, you name it, across the board of chronic disease, you have to assume, and there's quite a few studies on this, that we're approaching a majority of Americans just don't know what to eat and don't have that relationship with food, and there is that food confusion. Yeah. On top of, I mean, we're on Instagram, on top of all the influencers and everyone telling you what to eat, what to do.
So then what do you do if you're in that situation? I know that person asked that. We like to refer to therapists, and if we feel like it's not just disordered eating patterns, but it's an eating disorder, then we will refer to eating disorder therapists.
Right.
And then they will assess, is that person in dire need and maybe needing to be in an inpatient facility? Are they going to thrive in an outpatient program? What does that look like for them? But definitely having support from a trained mental health practitioner. Sometimes with patients with me, we discover this is eating disorder behavior, and I will refer them to Joseph. I will say, I'm not an eating disorder specialist. Please follow up with Joseph, our eating disorder dietitian, and follow up with an eating disorder therapist. And so Joseph will link them in with somebody who is versed in that. But sometimes it takes a while to even uncover and unravel those layers where, one, someone's comfortable divulging those details to us as dietitians, and two, comfortable enough to say, I'll think about getting help. I'm preparing to get help. I'm in the action phase. I'm getting help. I'm calling, making appointments. So really understanding where that person is in their changes, their stages of change, rather.
Right.
Yeah. So
Wonderful
great questions,
guys.
Hi, Sumit. Hi, Dr. Ball. Nice to have you here. All right. And someone's asking, oh, serious question. What brand multivitamin do you recommend for kids? Totally off topic. Again, this varies kid to kid and what they might need. So I would ask your healthcare team. We can share what we give to our daughter. We give her Mary Ruth multivitamin. So, but check with your care team. Work with your own care team, because your kid might not need a multivitamin, or they might need something different.
Yes.
All right, guys.
All right.
We hope you've enjoyed tuning in. This is a topic that is near and dear to our hearts, and I think not talked about enough, but is starting to be, which is a really positive thing. But we encourage you all, if you have tried every diet out there, if you've taken every medication for your gut and you're finding some relief, but you're not quite getting to that root, we encourage you to maybe understand or think about your values, your relationship with food, and what that's looked like over the span of your life, and if that might be impacting the way that you're feeling, and working with your care team to get some love and get some support for that.
All right. Wonderful. Well, happy Friday, everybody. Have a great weekend. Again, comment below if you're watching this later, not live. Let us know what topics you want to learn about, discuss, chat, ask questions live. Until next time, we'll see you next Friday after next. And we'll be back with another great topic related to the gut. And
we
let us know
hope
if
you
like
with each meal.
Let us know if you like being part of the Good Gut Gang.
Yeah.
If that's what you like.
Do you guys like being called that, or should we stop?
Let us know. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Have a healing weekend.